My Parasite husband stole $50,000 to travel with his mistress to Paris, but the card he used was a federal trap I designed, and he incriminated himself completely. I'm 34 years old. I work in cybersecurity, and what happened 6 months ago still seems unreal when I think about it. Like, did I actually live through that? The thing is, I discovered that my husband stole my credit card information to finance a $50,000 luxury trip to Europe with another woman. But here's the best part. The guy had no idea that the card he stole was basically a trap, like a digital hook that I use at my job to train people about fraud. I mean, my husband literally incriminated himself using the tools from my own profession. The irony is so brutal that sometimes I laugh to myself thinking about it, you know? I guess I should start from the beginning so you understand how we got to this ridiculously insane point. I met Marcus about 7 years ago at a tech conference. He was working in marketing for a startup, and I had just gotten my position at a cybersecurity company. He was charming, very charismatic, one of those guys who walks into a room and everyone turns to, look at them. We had instant chemistry. We dated for 2 years before getting married, and during that time everything seemed perfect. He was attentive, funny, always had interesting plans for weekends, made me feel special. You know, all those things you look for in a partner. We got married when I was 29, and honestly the first few years were good. Or at least that's what I thought. Marcus kept working in his field but changed companies a couple of times, which at the time didn't seem weird to me because the tech market is like that. People move around a lot. What did start to become a pattern was that he lasted less and less time at each job. 6 months here, 4 months there was always a problem with the boss or with the company culture or with the projects they assigned him. And well, I was earning good money. Really good money, actually. So when he was out of work for long periods, it wasn't something that affected us economically in a dramatic way. I paid all the bills. Without a problem, we had a nice apartment, we went out to dinner, we traveled from time to time, everything normal. But looking back, I should have seen it coming, seriously. Because after the 3rd year of marriage, Marcus basically stopped actively looking for work. He said he was working on a personal project, something about independent consulting that never took off, and I like an idiot believed him, or at least pretended to believe him, because I didn't want to admit that my husband had become someone who lived completely off my salary. And it's not that maintaining the household bothered me. The problem was that he acted as if his contribution was equivalent to mine just because he washed the dishes or went to the supermarket once in a while. The thing is, I was working between 50 and 60 hours a week on super demanding projects. I'd come home exhausted, and Marcus was there on the couch watching Netflix or playing video games. Like, seriously? What bothered me most, and I see this super clearly now, is that he never showed real gratitude. I paid for everything. Absolutely everything. The rent, the food, his phone, his gym that he never went to, his streaming subscriptions, even the clothes he wore because obviously without income he couldn't buy anything, and he acted like it was my obligation, like I owed him that lifestyle. And when I tried to talk about it, super carefully because I didn't want to seem resentful, he'd come at me with how I didn't value his emotional support, that he gave me stability at home, that not everything is about money. And I'd shut up because, well, part of me felt guilty for even bringing up the subject. You know what I mean? Like 5 years went by like that. 5 years in which I basically financed his life while he just stayed comfortable without any real pressure. And I'm not going to lie. There were moments when I thought about leaving him, about sitting down and telling him, look, this isn't working. You need to contribute, somehow, or this is over. But I always found an excuse not to do it. Like if we were in a good moment, or if something stressful had just happened at work and I didn't want to deal with drama at home, or if maybe things were going to change soon. Excuses, basically. Because I was afraid to admit that I had made a mistake marrying him. So we get to February of this year. I was working on a super important new project for the company. Basically, we were developing a training program to detect credit card fraud. Part of my job was to create dummy accounts, like fake accounts that look real but are monitored 24/7 and connected directly to fraud detection systems. The idea is that if someone tries to use those cards, it immediately triggers an alert, and we can track everything, like where the purchase was made, what was bought, at what time. Basically, a complete map of fraudulent activity. It's a super sophisticated training tool, and I was super proud of the project because it was my baby. I had designed it almost completely myself. One of those dummy accounts I had saved on my work laptop, which I normally leave on my desk at home when I'm not using it. It was a Tuesday night, like 2 inches the morning. and I got up to go to the bathroom. When I passed through the living room, I saw light and found Marcus on my laptop. I asked him what he was doing, and he told me something super vague. That he was looking for I don't know what information for a project, that he needed to use my computer because his was slow. At that moment, it seemed weird to me, but not suspicious. You know? I mean, we'd been married for years. We shared many things. It wasn't that strange for him to use my laptop. I told him to hurry up because I had to get up early and I went back to sleep. I didn't think more about it until like 2 weeks later. I was checking my banking app, something I do religiously every morning because I work in security, so I'm super paranoid about my finances. And I saw something that made me almost drop my phone. There were like $50,000 in charges that I didn't recognize. And they weren't normal purchases like Amazon or the supermarket. They were international flights, luxury hotels, expensive restaurants, everything concentrated in Paris. My first reaction was to think that someone had hacked my account, that I was a victim of fraud, which is ironic considering my profession. But then I saw the card they had used, and I almost had a heart attack. It was the dummy card, the training card that I had created for the work project, and then everything clicked in my head like a horrible puzzle. Marcus had gotten into my laptop that night, had found the card information, and had assumed it was one of my personal cards. The idiot literally stole from me thinking he was stealing a real card, having no idea that that card was connected directly to federal fraud detection systems. I mean, every charge he had made had been registered, tracked, analyzed, and automatically reported. He had completely given himself away all by himself. I sat in bed for like half an hour, trying to process what I was seeing. On one hand, I was in total shock, because my husband, the man I'd been married to for 7 years, had stolen from me. He hadn't just stolen from me, he had stolen information from my work, he had committed credit card fraud, and he had done it to finance what? A vacation? A pleasure trip? And then I started thinking, wait, Marcus is supposedly at home all the time. When the hell did he go to Paris? I sent him a message asking where he was, and he answered that he was at the gym. Lie, obviously. I checked the dates of the charges, and they corresponded exactly with a week when he told me he was going to visit his brother in another state. I mean, the guy lied to me about a complete trip, used my stolen card to pay for everything, and thought I was never going to find out. The first thing I did was call my friend Lauren, who also works in tech, and tell her everything. She literally screamed over the phone, like, I can't believe he did that to you. You have to report it now. But I was paralyzed, you know? Because reporting it meant that Marcus was going to have serious legal problems. We're talking about federal fraud, and as angry as I was, the idea of sending my husband to prison terrified me. Lauren told me not to be an idiot, that he had no problem stealing from me and betraying me, and that I didn't owe loyalty to someone who clearly didn't respect me one bit. I called Chloe, my lawyer, who I've known since college. I told her the whole situation, and she was super direct. She told me, Rachel, this is credit card fraud. It's a federal crime, and if the authorities find out, and they're going to find out because that account is monitored, Marcus is going to face charges with or without your cooperation. The best thing you can do is protect yourself legally and make sure it's clear that you're the victim here, not an accomplice. I put it in perspective for me that this wasn't just a marital problem, it was a serious legal problem that could affect me too if I didn't handle it correctly. That same afternoon, around 3 o'clock, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Agent Keller, a federal investigator assigned to my case. And yes, I said my case, because officially I was the victim of credit card fraud. The agent was super professional. He explained to me that they had detected fraudulent activity on one of my monitored accounts and that they needed me to come give a statement. I told him I had reason to believe that my husband was responsible, and he told me that complicated things, but that they needed to proceed anyway. We agreed that I would go to the federal office the next day to give my formal testimony. That night, I couldn't sleep. Marcus came home around 10, normal, like nothing, and started watching TV while I pretended to work on my laptop. I'd look at him and think, who are you? How can you act so calm after what you did? Part of me wanted to scream at him, confront him right there, but Chloe had told me not to say anything until after I gave my official statement because anything Marcus said could be used against him, and I didn't want to seem like I was trying to manipulate the situation. So I stayed quiet, waiting, feeling how my marriage was disintegrating in silence while he laughed at some stupid TV show. The next day, I went to the federal office and gave my complete statement. I told them about the night I found Marcus on my laptop, about the charges I discovered, about the lies he had told me. Agent Keller took notes on everything and told me they were going to proceed with a formal investigation. He asked me if I knew Marcus was in Paris, and I told him no, that he had lied to me about his whereabouts. Then the agent showed me evidence they had already collected: photos of Marcus at the Paris airport, reservations at 5-star hotels, charges at restaurants. That cost more than what I spend on food in a month. And there was something else: photos of Marcus with a woman I didn't know. They looked super romantic, hugging, kissing, like a honeymoon couple. I felt like I'd been kicked in the stomach. He hadn't just stolen from me, he hadn't just lied to me, but he had done it to finance a romantic trip with another woman. Agent Keller asked me if I knew the woman, and I said no. I'd never seen her in my life. He explained to me that they had already identified her. Her name was Nicole. She worked as a marketing manager at a company where Marcus had worked briefly like 2 years ago. Apparently, they had been seeing each other secretly since then. 2 years. My husband had been having an affair for 2 years, and I had no idea because I was too busy working to support him and finance his comfortable, unemployed life. I left that meeting feeling a weird mix of absolute fury and strange satisfaction. Fury because, obviously, my husband had betrayed me in every possible way. But satisfaction because the idiot had trapped himself using my own work tools. Agent Keller told me that Marcus was going to be contacted soon for interrogation and that there would probably be an arrest. He asked me if I felt safe at home, and I told him yes. That Marcus wasn't violent. He was just a lying, useless thief, but not physically dangerous. Marcus came back from what I now knew was his second trip to Europe. Like a week later, he arrived with an expensive new suitcase, paid with my stolen card, for sure, and acting all relaxed and tanned. He sat on the couch and started telling me about his supposed trip to see his brother, making up details about things they supposedly did. I listened to him thinking, do you really think I'm that stupid? But I didn't say anything. I just smiled and nodded, while he kept digging his own grave with every lie. At one point, Marcus started talking about how we needed a vacation, that we should go somewhere exotic. And I almost laughed in his face. I asked him, like casually, "And where do you suggest we go?" And he told me Paris, that he had heard it was incredible. This guy's audacity was impressive. Seriously. There he was, just back from Paris with his lover, using my stolen money, and suggesting that we go together like nothing. I decided to play along a bit. I told him that Paris sounded good, but it was expensive, right? Where were we going to get the money from? Marcus told me not to worry about that he would find a way to pay for it. I asked him how exactly he was going to do that, considering he'd been without work for years, and he got upset. Told me that I was always obsessed with money, that not everything in life was about finances. I had to bite my tongue not to explode right there because the irony was too much. This guy had literally stolen from me and was telling me that I was obsessed with money. That night, when Marcus was in the shower, I checked his phone. I know. Invasion of privacy. But considering he had stolen information from my work laptop, I didn't feel particularly guilty. I found messages with Nicole. Hundreds of messages. They talked about the trips they had taken, about how much they missed each other, about future plans where Marcus was finally going to leave me and they were going to be together. In one of the most recent messages, Marcus was telling Nicole that soon he was going to have enough money to leave me, that he just needed a little more time to get everything he could out of me. I mean, he literally saw me as a human ATM. I put the phone in my pocket and waited for Marcus to get out of the bathroom. When he came out, I told him we needed to talk. He got nervous immediately. I saw it on his face. And he asked me about what. I told him, "I don't know, Marcus. You tell me. Is there anything you want to tell me?" He denied everything. Said he didn't know what I was talking about, that I was acting weird. Then, I showed him his phone with the messages open. His face went white. Literally all the color disappeared, and he started stammering incoherent explanations about how it wasn't what it seemed, that Nicole was just a friend, that the messages were out of context. I told him, "Marcus, I saw you in Paris. I have photos of you with her. I know about the $50,000 you spent. I know you stole my credit card. And here comes the best part." I took out my phone and started recording him. I told him, "Explain to me exactly what you did." And he, being the arrogant idiot he is, thought he could still manipulate the situation. He started telling me everything, like he was proud. He told me that yes, he had used my card because I didn't appreciate everything he did for me, that he deserved to treat himself once in a while, that the trips to Paris had been incredible, that he had stayed at the most luxurious hotel he had ever seen in his life, that he had eaten at Michelin-starred restaurants. All of this I was recording, every incriminating word coming out of his mouth while he thought he was justifying his actions. I asked him and Nicole, "What about Nicole?" And he told me that she understood him in a way I never could, that with her he felt valued, that she didn't make him feel bad for not having a job. I told him, then why don't you go with her? Use the money you have left from my $50,000 and go. And he told me he was going to do it eventually, but that first he needed to make sure he could get everything possible out of me. He literally told me that I was his source of income until he could establish himself with Nicole. The complete recording lasted like 15 minutes, and it was basically a complete confession of fraud, theft, adultery, and his plans to keep financially exploiting me. When he finished talking, I told him, "Marcus, there's something you need to know about that card you used." He asked me what, like annoyed, as if I was being dramatic. I told him it wasn't my personal card, that it was a dummy card connected to federal fraud detection systems, that every charge he had made had been monitored and automatically reported to federal authorities. The expression on his face was something I'm going to treasure forever. Like, first total confusion, then slow comprehension of what that meant, and finally absolute panic. He started saying, "No, no, no, that can't be real. You're lying." And I showed him the reports on my laptop, all the tracking of his purchases, the alerts that had been generated, the formal case that was already open. I told him I had given my statement, that the authorities already knew everything, that there was a federal investigator assigned to the case. Marcus became hysterical, started screaming that I had set him up, that I had planned all of this to ruin him. And I just laughed, because the reality was that he had ruined himself all by himself for being greedy and stupid. The doorbell rang right at that moment, like perfect movie timing. It was Agent Keller with 2 local police officers. Marcus tried to run toward the bedroom, but one of the officers stopped him. Agent Keller read him his rights while Marcus kept screaming that this was my fault, that I had put him in this position, that the authorities should investigate me for creating traps. I just stood there watching him be handcuffed and taken out of my apartment, feeling zero guilt and immense satisfaction. The following days were weird. On one hand, I felt relieved that Marcus wasn't in the house, but on the other hand, I was processing the fact that my marriage had ended in the most dramatic way possible. Marcus was interrogated and apparently tried to blame me. Said I had left the card information on purpose for him to find it, that I knew he was going to use it. But the evidence against him was overwhelming. They had the complete tracking of his purchases, the photos of him in Paris, the messages with Nicole where he talked about stealing from me, and the recording I had made where he basically confessed everything. His lawyer recommended he accept a plea deal because going to trial was going to be a total disaster for him. Marcus accepted the deal. He had to pay full restitution of the $50,000 plus interest, do community service, and was left with a federal record for fraud. The restitution is obviously a joke because the guy has no money or way to get it. So, I'm probably going to spend years receiving tiny payments that will never add up to the total. But at least officially he's in debt to me. Nicole left him immediately after the arrest. By the way, apparently their super special romance wasn't so strong when Marcus stopped having access to stolen money and became a convicted criminal. I know this because Marcus tried to contact me from jail, begging me to help him, to talk to the authorities to reduce the charges, that he had no one else. I told him to fuck off, basically. The divorce papers were finalized like 3 months ago. It was surprisingly quick considering everything, but Chloe is very good at her job. I kept the apartment, all our shared things that obviously I had paid for, and Marcus left with nothing except his criminal charges and his debt to me. Part of me thought I was going to feel sadness or nostalgia for what I lost, but honestly, I only feel relief. Those last years with him were miserable, even though I wouldn't admit it at the time. I was tired all the time from working so hard to support someone who didn't appreciate anything I did, who saw me as a resource to exploit instead of as his partner. Now I live alone and it's incredible. I come home and the house is how I left it. There's no one lying on the couch expecting me to provide everything. I go out with friends. I travel when I want. I spend my money on myself without feeling guilty. Lauren says I should start dating someone new, but honestly, I'm not in a hurry. After 7 years with Marcus, being alone feels like permanent vacation. Plus, I have an incredible story for first dates, you know? Hi, I'm Rachel. I caught my ex-husband using my own work tools to commit federal fraud. Not something many people can say. Last week, I ran into Marcus's brother at the supermarket. It was super awkward. He tried to talk to me, told me that Marcus was having a hard time, that he regretted everything, that he hoped I could forgive him someday. I told him that Marcus had many opportunities to do things right and chose to steal from me and cheat on me instead, that his regret now was irrelevant to me. And the brother told me I was cold, and I responded that no, I had simply learned not to let people like Marcus take advantage of me ever again, and that's basically where I am now. I'm 34 years old. I have a job I love, an apartment just for me, and no parasitic husband draining my bank account while cheating on me. I guess in the end, Marcus did me a favor by being so obviously stupid with his crime. If he had been smarter, if he had used a real card instead of the dummy one, it probably would have taken me much longer to find out, and who knows how much more he would have stolen from me. But no, he had to use exactly the only card that was connected to federal monitoring systems, and that exposed him completely. Sometimes I think about how Marcus felt when he finally understood what he had done, when he realized he had used the perfect tool to incriminate himself. I imagine that moment of pure horror when everything clicked in his head and he knew he was completely screwed. And I'm not going to lie, that image makes me smile every time. I'm not normally a vindictive person, but considering this guy spent years living off my money while planning to leave me after stealing everything possible from me, I think a little satisfaction is justified. The story spread in my social circle, obviously. Some of our mutual friends stopped talking to me, said I had been too harsh, that I should have handled things privately instead of involving the authorities. But most people, especially my female friends, supported me completely. Lauren literally organized a divorce party for me where the theme was liberation. It was cheesy but fun, and it made me feel like I made the right decision in not protecting someone who clearly didn't deserve my loyalty. My family also had mixed opinions. My mom said that marriages go through difficult times and that maybe I should have tried couples therapy before divorce. I explained to her that Marcus stole $50,000 from me and cheated on me for 2 years, that it wasn't exactly a normal, difficult time, and she went quiet. My sister, on the other hand, told me I should have done it years ago, that she always knew Marcus was a freeloader, typical of sisters, right? They always know everything after it already happened. At work, nobody knows the complete details of what happened, just that my dummy account was used in a real fraud case and that I helped with the investigation. My boss congratulated me on how quickly I detected and reported the fraudulent activity, not knowing that the fraud came from my own home. Sometimes I'm tempted to tell the whole story because it's objectively incredible, but I keep my mouth shut because I prefer my professional privacy. The weird thing is, I don't miss Marcus at all. I thought I was going to miss having a partner, having someone there when I got home. But it turns out I prefer 1,000 times coming home to an empty apartment than to one with someone who doesn't respect me. And that made me reflect on how much time I wasted in a relationship that fundamentally wasn't working just because I was afraid of being alone or admitting that I had made a mistake marrying him. Those 7 years could have been used for a million better things, but well, at least I learned the lesson. The other day, I was reviewing my finances and I realized how much extra money I have now, that I'm not supporting Marcus. It's obvious, mathematically, but seeing it in real numbers was shocking. In these months since the divorce, I've been able to save more than I saved in years with him. I'm planning a trip to Japan for the end of the year, something I always wanted to do but never did because I felt I should use my money for the house and for us as a couple. Now I can do whatever I want with my money, and it's liberating on a level I can't fully explain. Lauren asked me yesterday if I ever felt anything for Marcus after everything, if there was a moment where I thought about not reporting him or trying to fix things. I told her honestly, no. That the moment I saw those charges in Paris with the other woman, something broke completely in me, and I never felt a single second of doubt about exposing everything. Maybe that makes me cold, like Marcus's brother said, but I'd rather be cold than be an idiot. I was already stupid enough for 7 years tolerating someone who clearly didn't value me. Last week, Agent Keller called for me to tell me the case was officially closed. Marcus had completed his plea deal and was now on probation. He asked me how I was handling everything, and I told him better than ever that it had been the best decision of my life to report the fraud instead of covering it up. He told me they had seen many cases where the victim protects the criminal for emotional reasons and that my cooperation had been exemplary. I'm not going to lie. Feeling validation from a federal investigator about my decision to report my ex-husband was satisfying in a weird way. I guess the moral of this whole ridiculous story is to never let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting yourself, even if that person is your husband. Marcus bet that I was going to prioritize our marriage over my own well-being and justice, and he lost that bet completely. And honestly, looking at everything from where I am now, alone in my apartment, with no emotional debts to anyone, planning a trip to Japan with the money I earn and can now spend on myself, I think I won much more than I lost in the end.